values in multi-dimensions, often many millions of them, and then trying to fit a curve or a surface that goes through all of these. So even though we do not know some things based on the values or based on the surface and the previous training, we are able to predict what it is. And that is the key of this generative pre-trained or GPT, or that is the greatness of the attention mechanism. So previously, such an algorithms existed, but to compute each of these values, it would have required a few years based on the processor values. But what has changed is the graphics processing units has millions of cores which can process very simple instructions. It was primarily used to convert each pixel into the next pixel in a graphics image. But now the same computational power and technology has been used to process these vectors, and the algorithm itself is very, very conducive to matrix manipulations, which are very, very suitable for processing on a GPU. So that is the reason why you see the breakthrough happen only recently. Now, I will not go into the algorithm itself. It is quite complicated, and it is not the topic right now. Let us see a few things. First, how do we make this GPT provide answers to us? Okay. First is zero shot prompting. So you all have used Google, and it says it is this very simple user interface, and one of the buttons says, I am feeling lucky. So think of this as a zero shot. So zero shot in that you write a prompt, you supply sufficient information in that the LLM is able to answer in a single query. In a single prompt, it's able to answer. That is called as a zero shot prompting. Next is few shot prompting. So think of it this as a dialogue. You ask a question and you provide few examples. And based on your prompt and the examples, the GPT is able to come up with the required answer. Next, let's look at a prompting technique called chain of thought. Now, chain of thought, think of it uh, as a series of actions which you need to do to actually solve the problem. So, to get the chain of thought, first what you do is you get all the intermediate goals. So even if there is a complex task, let us say there are a series of equations. You say first solve the value of x, then solve the y, substitute x and y in this equation 3, then you get the value of z or z. I mean, I gave a very crude example, but if you can elaborate all the steps in between or intermediate values and steps, that is the chain of thought. So this is a very, very powerful technique. And sometimes you can make the GPT itself come up with these intermediate steps. And then later ask the GPT as to elaborate and on each and individual step to arrive at the final answer. So by asking the GPT saying, think step by step, that's a magic keyword or magic sentence. By prepending your prompt by saying, think step by step, you are able to oftentimes go into this chain of thought prompting, and you will be able to use it um, in quite a few situations and with very good results. Next, let us look at meta prompting. Now, meta prompting, don't focus on the name itself. These names have been come up with various researchers. Uh, Sometimes it may not be obvious with the technique and the name, but this is called as meta prompting. Essentially, you're focusing on the syntax or the form of the output. So what you could say is, let us say you ask the prompt, what is the temperature in Hyderabad? So the GPT is very verbose and it will generate a big answer. Normally it is, very hot in Hyderabad and something, something, and, and it keeps on generating a very big answer, maybe a paragraph or so. But we do not need all that. All we are looking for is a number. So in the prompt, you can say, what is the temperature of in Hyderabad? Answer only in the number and reply in centigrade. So you've given it very specific requirements of the output, saying that it only has to answer with the number, and that too it has to be it's assumed that it's in centigrade. So the answer comes out 35, whatever, right? Now you got the answer in a very, very specific format. So typically we prompt the engine to generate data in JSON format which is called JavaScript object notation, or sometimes we ask the format to be in terms of simple one-line text, one word of text, or a single number, right? So this is the meta prompting. Now, obviously, when you use meta prompting, you save the tokens. Tokens is output tokens. As you know, the GPT charges you by the token that it generates. So this is one way to reduce the number of tokens. And more importantly, because you have specified the format of the data, you could analyze the data using a program and make further analysis of that. Now, automatic reasoning and tools. Now, what is a tool? Now, tool is a computer program. Think of it as a software or a computer program that is suitable for a very specific purpose. So let us take the example of calculator. Calculator can take, let us say, two inputs and an operator and generate an output. Now, really speaking, the chat GPT, the GPT engine, looks at the existing patterns and generates a new ones. So obviously, it does not have information about each and every problem, right? It is not able to memorize or observe each and every pattern. Let's say you give it a problem 1.456 plus something else. So obviously, it has not seen such a data previously and it is unable to answer. But because it is able to access the calculator, it supplies the data to the calculator and gets the output and then gives it to us. So here the calculator is a tool. So this is what is meant by automatic reasoning and tools. So in this multi-step reasoning prompt, it actually makes use of some tools that we supply before giving an answer. Finally, there is another powerful technique called as retrieval augmented generation. Now, what it does is the the one that I've indicated in sky blue, the document store. So this is your data. For the lack of better thing, I'm saying, let us say it is your resume or some other document. Let us say a legal contract. So what this technique does is we first convert your data, that is your contract or document, into a set of tokens and store it in this vector database. Here I've shown it as document store, but this is actually a vector database. So vector database analyzes the data in multiple dimensions and it is able to identify similar terms. Like I've mentioned, a queen is similar to woman. It's also similar to a girl. It's also similar to a rich in multiple dimensions. So, given a word or a sentence, it is able to generate, identify similar sentences within the right. So that documents are what I called as retrieved documents. Retrieved documents or data is then supplied to the generator, that is the GPT. It also becomes part of your prompt. So your prompt, along with the context that is generated, together is used to generate a response. So this in this way, when you supply a contract and then ask a prompt, what was the dollar value of the contract? It will be able to answer. Or you could say, what constitutes a breach of the contract? It's instantly able to analyze the uh, document and then give a very specific response. So even though it was not trained on it, because he supplied this extra context based on the document or contract, it's able to give the proper response. This is called as RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Now let's talk about agents. Previously, I mentioned that um, tool AI calculator is an AI tool. There could be many other tools that you write, right? Now let's talk about the agents. Agents are autonomous and they take actions. Now, just to give an example, right? James Bond is your agent. He will do the job. But James Bond uses a tool called a revolver. So, roughly, the agents are much more capable and they are able to utilize the LLM, the knowledge of the LLM, and it is also the agents are also able to use tools, and most importantly, not only do they generate information, they're able to actually take an action. Like there could be a agent which is listening to the conversation in a meeting and it is able to take update the calendar. So the minute the people in the meeting decide to have the next meeting or they want to follow up something and they mention a date, it makes a note of it in a calendar. That's an agent. Now, a little bit more information about the agents. Agent first gets a task or a prompt, and the agent is able to make use of tools, as you mentioned, and agent has memory of the previous task. So the agent also has context on which to operate. And the agent is able to do some planning. Planning is what we call as orchestration. That is, it first arrives at steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it uses tools and the memory and then it's able to take the action. Now, here I've shown agent to agent. So now one agent is able to talk to other agents, tools, and context, and then accomplish a job. These are now becoming possible. And just to give an example, let us say I ask my agent to book a vacation for me. That's all prompt I give. So this agent first looks at the weather. So in the month of August, in the month of September, what are all the places that have good weather? And the agent also knows that I like to play golf. So it will pick a location which has good weather as well as where I can play golf. And then it talks to the agent of the airline. And then it determines which of these places has a reasonable or low airfare. And then it books a ticket, and it also books a car, a rental car for me, and a hotel room for me. Now, all I gave was book a vacation, and the agent was able to talk to other agents and get the job done. So this is like a dream scenario where the entire activity happened between agents and they did all the work for you, whereas you just, it's like truly your assistant. Now, you must have heard the term elephant in the room. So, what is this elephant in the room? Generative AI is the elephant in the room. You cannot ignore it. It is a new reality, whether you like it or not like it. It is the reality. You have to acknowledge it. Now, in this situation, what is your strategy? So, first thing is AI is your friend. Think of AI as your friend and how you can benefit from it. Now, initially, we may feel betrayed or we may feel bad that what would I do? If AI is doing all the job, what will I do? Right? This is very narrow thinking. So think of this as an accountant who uses a calculator. If the accountant insists on doing all the multiplications with hand, he is not getting any advantage. Instead, he is burdened. On the other hand, if he uses a calculator, he can speed up his work. And also, once upon a time, the calculations, multiplications were done with paper and pencil. In fact, there used to be a job called computer who were people who used to calculate the trajectories of bombs in World War. But now computers do it. Similarly, An accountant uses a calculator to get his accounts done. That did not make accountant irrelevant. In fact, he is able to do much more. Now, I have a question for you. Which company invented digital photography? Okay, so I am presenting you with the options: Canon, Sony, Fuji, or Nikon. All these, as you know, are leaders in digital photography, right? But the irony is the digital photography was invented at Kodak. Kodak, as you know, was the leader in film cameras, and digital photography was invented in that. But Kodak thought if it promotes digital photography, nobody would buy its film. So it did not promote digital photography. Then what happened? Canon invented it, and then it took a lead. And then, as you know, now Kodak is near bankrupt. Similarly, unless you adopt AI, you will also become like this Kodak. You'll become irrelevant. Now, you've definitely heard the or uh, got the thought that, oh my God, AI is going to come and take my job. No, the answer is not really true. AI will definitely change the landscape. It is definitely going to change the status quo, and AI will do some of your jobs, certainly. But AI is not going to take away your job. The, your job will be taken by a candidate who knows how to use AI. So you should be the one who knows how to use AI so that you don't lose your job to another candidate who knows how to use the AI better. And another thought here is each one of us need not invent AI algorithms, but we should definitely be able to use the AI. Sometimes using the AI is of greater value than inventing AI. Like, for example, I often give the example an aeroplane engineer, airplane engineer. Not everybody needs to be an airplane engineer to fly an aeroplane. So just fly the aeroplane and take advantage, or be the pilot, right? And take the advantage. Now, this is the reaction saying the sky is falling. Now, Gen AI